Welcome to the Festival of Storytellers. I thank everybody that's involved with this process because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers.
Experience is not about the publisher, it is about us, the authors.
Well, hello. My name is Thomas Fargnoli, Tom for short. The F-A-R-G is one of those lasagna things going on, G-N-N, Fargnoli, but Fargnoli's fine. And it's great to be on the festival, Storytellers. And I'll start out by telling, I have 3 stories to tell, and I hope you enjoy all 3. First, I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I was not cut out to be a writer. I guess in the beginning, this wasn't my intent. I was an engineer for over 45 years. I was a teacher in a college atmosphere as an senior adjunct teacher in computer science. I was a magician. My daughter and I used to do magic shows. I still do magic shows from time to time, but mostly close-up magic. And later on, I'll tell you, you can actually see some of my magic tricks on my website. And I was also a deacon in the Catholic Church. Now, a deacon in the Catholic Church is an ordained minister, sort of like a priest, but a priest cannot be married. A deacon can be married one time only, and assists a priest and also other ministries as well. So I had a fairly, robust background. Was married for 40 years before my wife passed away rather tragically. I lived in a house, same house for 40 years. And as I mentioned, I worked as an engineer for over 40 years. Well, all 3 things came to an end rather abruptly. I lost my wife to suicide. And that was very tragic and very sudden. I retired just prior to that. So my whole life I thought was going to be being a deacon, traveling with my wife and enjoying life that way. So here I am now, single, and I had to make a decision, a very, very hard decision. So my first book, going through all of those things, the loss of a wife, and trying to make a decision, I was seeing a therapist. Now, the therapist suggested that I write things down. So I did. And what I wrote down became my first book called The Deacon, An Unexpected Life. This book really, as I mentioned, wasn't meant to be a book at all. It was just meant to be a cathartic experience, to write down my thoughts. What was I thinking? How did I go through that grieving? How is grieving different when it's a suicide? How's the grieving different when you're a deacon in the Catholic Church? All of these things make grieving a lot more complex. And how was it to go through such such rejection. I captured it in a story. It's a true story. I like a little bit of fiction involved to make it interesting, and I think you'll like it. Again, when I first put this book out, I was getting all kinds of great reviews. People loved it, and I think that was because it was really from my heart. It was just my passion that I just wrote about, and as I mentioned, my life was going perfect. And then the unexpected events. That's why I called it The Deacon, An Unexpected Life, because not just me, but everybody that's listening to this, I'm sure you've had some unexpected events in your life. So what do we do when those unexpected events occur? And I think you'll get some insight into my book. Because not only did I lose my wife tragically from suicide, but I also had open heart surgery soon after, a quadruple bypass surgery. And then I had to make my decision. As I mentioned, a deacon can only be married one time. Now, when I signed up to be a deacon and go through the 5.5 to 6 years of study and became a deacon, was ordained, I signed a form saying, yeah, if my wife passes away, then I won't get married again. Now, you know who had the hardest time with that rule, which was created in 1965, by the way. It's a man-made rule, but I knew about it. But it was my wife that didn't like that rule. I says, well, why wouldn't you like it? I'm going to die before you. Most men think that, right? They think that, we're going to die before our wives. So I knew about it up here, but I didn't know about it here. And so I had a hard time. And after 2 years of grieving, after 2 years of trying to make a decision whether to be single and stay a deacon or to pursue a possible relationship in the future, because, I knew what loneliness was. Let me correct that. I always enjoyed being alone, whether it was traveling, just doing things alone. I enjoyed it. But that's quite a different thing than loneliness. Loneliness means all of a sudden, after 45 years, I have no one to share my experiences with. Small experiences, nothing large, just, the normal run-of-the-mill day. How was your day? That's what I missed. And so I made the decision to go forward with, a relationship, potential, and leave the diaconate. Leaving the diaconate was the last thing on my mind. Again, it wasn't in my plan. But the Catholic Church made it very simple. I couldn't stay a deacon, and I couldn't, pursue another relationship that could lead to marriage at the same time. So all of these things, the surgery, I share about what it was like to be a deacon. Some of the things I shared in the hospital with patients, and I rolled them all into the deacon. And it's a great story. It's my story, but it's also your story. Because as I mentioned before, we all have unexpected events. But I hope through mine, you will see the same glimpses of hope and peace and love that were shining through on me, despite all my unexpected events, despite the clouds in my life. And, we all have those clouds. So I hope that this book gives you a little peace. And at the same time, I think you'll enjoy it because it is a true story. It is a passionate story. Okay. And so now that book was written and I was getting all these inputs like, hey, I love this book, it's, all good reviews on Amazon. I decided that, well, what did I like most about being a deacon? I like preaching. I like talking about God. I like discussing the Bible. I liked, just common things. But now, instead of doing it instead of seeing this in wearing a fancy robe, being in a church, I can do what I really enjoy doing as a deacon in my writing. And that's when the second book came on the scene, Wisdom from the Wick. Now, the Wick, you might say, well, what is the Wick? The Wick is a tavern. It's a neighborhood bar. And it's actually called the Warwick Tavern. But all the locals call it the Wick. So I thought that there could be an individual. Now, this book is a fiction, Christian fiction book. And I thought that it would be something if someone who was very wise started showing up in this bar, this corner tavern, and talking to people. Now, people don't come to a bar to talk to someone about God or talk about the existence of heaven. They come to have a few drinks with their friends, to laugh, to get away. And so that's what makes this setting very unique. And it's about an individual named John. Now, no one really knows when John started showing up, right? He first started showing up in his discussions of faith and of love, just did not seem appropriate. And not only did his discussions not seem appropriate, he would bring out a pad of paper and draw to try to really enhance the understanding of the material. Because, see, everyone was kind of drawn to him. Well, I shouldn't say everyone in the bar, but people found him to be very approachable. And they shared things with him that they did not expect to share when they came in that bar for that night. But when they left feeling a lot better about themselves, a lot better about their relationships, a lot better about God. Again, unexpected. And, as I said, there was something about him that just drew people to him. And so with this book, I invite you to pull a stool up at the bar. Ask Ronnie or Louie for a drink or water if you like. But relax, open your mind and your heart. And what I try to do in this book is very similar to what I tried to do in The Deacon. And that is to show that through our troubles, through our unexpected events, through all of the tragedies that surround us, there are glimpses of hope, glimpses of light, and glimpses of peace. It doesn't have to be in a church. It could be in a bar. It could be in a lake. It could be on the beach. It just requires you to open your mind and to hear the talk, hear God speaking to you as only He can speak to you. No one else can, except maybe John. So again, it turned out to be a good book. It's not been out long, so I'm still getting reviews on it, but all good. And so here I am now with all this experience as a deacon, experience as a magician, experience as a teacher, experience as an engineer. And what I've learned was that you don't leave those things, regardless of what you did in your life. You don't leave them behind. As an author, you take them with you and you tap in to where they exist. Okay. It's often said that, we don't experience God up here. We experience Him here. It's the same thing. You can replace God for love. We experience love here in our hearts. Blaise Pascal, one of my favorite authors and philosophers back in the 1600s, wrote a book called Pensees. Translated, it just means thoughts. He was well known for calculus and his math. But this particular book talked about a proof of God. Imagine that. It's something you can't prove up here. But Blaise said that your heart has reasoning that your mind doesn't understand. So I use a lot of Blaise in my writings. Now, after the Wisdom of the Wick, my second story, as I just kind of described, I felt like I had to say something else. And I said, what is on everyone's mind these days? You know, and I think what's on a lot of people's mind is what happens after I die? Is there a heaven? And if there's a heaven, what's it like? Will we have bodies? Will we walk? How will we get around? Will we see our relatives? How about our pets? Will we see our pets? So I take the story a little step further. And this book I call Magnolia. And it's still being developed as I speak. So it's probably not going to be available until March. But in any case, it starts with a small town called Magnolia. Just so happens I grew up in Magnolia, and it was a beautiful town. 1 square mile of friendliness. In that time of growing up in the 60s, it was just beautiful. I'm very fortunate to have an amazing childhood. I could jump on my bike and I was ruler of the world. I can drive my bike everywhere and anywhere across Magnolia. I just had to be home at dinner. I had a Tarzan swing in my yard. I used to climb that Tarzan swing. My father and my uncle used to try to play a game. They'd say, you know, there's a lion coming. He's coming he's coming in our yard. You better see how fast you can get up that Tarzan swing. So I would climb up the Tarzan swing. And now I got in high school, a lot of people couldn't climb a rope. Now I don't even think they have them anymore because of insurance reasons. But I remember being able to climb that rope like a monkey. I went up one side and come down the other. So it was a great childhood. And this story is about this individual who's dying in a hospital. He's older, he's 92. And he's full of pain. He's coughing. He has coughing fits. But when he dozes off from the medicine or from just, being tired, he wakes up in Magnolia, in his hometown. And in his hometown, he finds the peace that he had when he was a child. But he's not a child. He's an adult, but no more pain. And he has so much energy. In fact, the Tarzan swing's still hanging. So he climbs up the Tarzan swing. He doesn't know what's going on. All he knows is that he feels great. He has all kinds of energy. And then he gets woken up in the hospital. And his daughter's there. Dad, are you okay? And the pain comes back. And he starts to talk, but he can't talk. He's coughing so bad. So he goes in and out this state of pain from 92 to a time when he was probably closer to 9, but yet he was an adult. Now, on one trip, he doesn't come back. He passes away. And his journey into heaven starts in Magnolia. Why? Well, you see, I've always believed that, and not everyone, everyone doesn't have a great childhood, but I believe that when we were children, we were really closest to God without realizing that we were close to God. We just lived. So what a perfect stage to begin our journey. And our journey starts with a guardian angel. And we answer a lot of those questions through this character. What's heaven like? Will we see our pets? Will we see our spouses that passed? Our fathers, our mothers, our children in some cases? How will we get around? So I tackle all of those things through the eyes of one individual, Lou, who's actually finding out about heaven as he goes. And again, it's my view. Obviously, it's a fiction book, but it's a fiction book based on the same principles, the same principles that my other two books were based on. And that is hope, love, peace. We all have lost people, and we all wish them peace. We wish them happiness. We wish that they're okay. So I hope that this book also gives you a sense of peace as you learn a little bit about Magnolia and what it was like to walk into a candy store with 25 cents. Wow, that's a lot of candy. So there's my 3 stories. I hope you enjoy them. The third story, as I mentioned, is not coming out for another month or so, but it's a smaller book, but it's a great book. So here I am doing all of this as a writer that I didn't plan on being. I'll answer some questions now. Can you walk through your experiences with your faith being challenged? Well, as I mentioned before, my life was really going perfect. And then everything happened at once. Losing someone to suicide is very troubling. You don't see it coming. And especially your wife of over 40 years. And there's so many factors involved, I'd say my faith was challenged the most then. And then, the soon after the open heart surgery, and then soon after that, making my decision. Did God really want me to be a deacon? Did he call me to be a deacon? I believe God calls us all, not to be a deacon, but to listen to him. He calls us to understand our life a little better. So yes, I was challenged. My faith, I was very challenged. But through it, somehow I felt that he's leading me. He's guiding me. 2 years after my wife passed away, I did, make that decision. Got a lot of rejection from other deacons and priests. And I did meet a woman, Dorothy, who lost her husband as well, rather suddenly and tragically. And we believe that our spouses brought us together, as strange as that might sound. So little by little, I saw bits and pieces of faith coming back into play. And it came back. It came back because I just opened my mind to it. It wasn't the life I expected, but it was life. And there was joy. Not, there was always sadness too, but there was joy. So I would say for any of those who are, thinking of losing their faith or have felt that, there's no faith, just take some time. Go in your room. Doesn't have to be in a church. Just go in your room and have an honest to God discussion with God. Tell him what you're thinking. And ask him to show you a way, a path. And then just let it happen. You'll be surprised. What are your recommended ways in coping with loss or loneliness? Well, I mentioned the difference between loneliness and being alone. Again, being alone is more of a state of mind, right? Or a condition, I should say. I'm alone today, but loneliness is an affliction that it's a horrible thing not to be able to share your life with, share your faith with, share things that you've learned, things that you've experienced with, things that you've felt, a book that you've read. Imagine just not being able to share anything. That's loneliness. I think when someone loses someone, that loneliness hits you right between the eyes. And I think, you're alone for sure, but now you really experience a loneliness. The loss, they talk about all the different stages of grief. And I would say there are all different stages. But loneliness is one of the toughest things to deal with. Anyway, that's what I would tell anyone, that hang in there and talk to people. Suicide is tough because people don't want to talk about it. I think Wisdom from the Wick is a good book to read. Just want to ask, in what ways a strong foundation of faith contributes to the authenticity of the narrative? That's a pretty good question. A strong foundation of faith. What is that? At first, you might think, well, someone who goes to church regularly has a strong foundation in church. That's not necessarily true. It most likely is, but it's not necessarily true. I've seen people that have strong faith that don't go to church. My sister was one. She just had a heart of gold. And I think she had a strong faith, not the faith of Bible faith, but the faith of just wanting to do good to people, wanting to treat people good. And I think that is the bottom line of a strong faith. A ancient Chinese, actually a Japanese philosopher once said, Confucius, I believe it was, said that it's better to save one life than to build a 7-story pagoda. Now, I think we spend too much time building pagodas, doing everything that we're supposed to do, doing everything that we feel is the right thing to do. But really, if you reach out and are good to people and you touch them in a very special way, and you let them know that you care for them, that you are empathetic about them, that you can walk a mile in their shoes. Well, that, my friend, is a strong foundation of faith. Okay, is there any other questions? I think I covered all my 3 books. Oh, here's a question. What are the main life lessons we can learn from your book, Wisdom from the Wick, that we can apply in our lives? Well, you never know who's going to come to you and talk to you and provide you with some wisdom. Knowledge is one thing, right? We can learn knowledge in a book. We can get knowledge from a teacher. But wisdom is something that comes from God. Yeah, wisdom. And so where do you get this wisdom? Right? I mean, you can ask God for it, but sometimes God does come through other people. And so I would say keep your eyes and your ears open. And the stories I tell in the Wick are related to that. The Japanese art of, it's a tough name, Kazami or something like that. When a vase breaks, rather than throw all the pieces up, they take the vase or vase, depending on your point of view, and they glue it together. But before they glue it together, they mix gold dust in the glue, and then they glue it together. So what happens is the cracks in the vase are accentuated. And that's kind of how we are. We are not perfect. We're broken. And I tell that story in the Wick to a person in the bar who's having doubts about being a teacher. She's been a teacher's assistant all her life, and she wants to be a teacher, and she's afraid to start now that she's in her 50s. But she's got a lot of life scars and everything else. But they would make her the best teacher of all. So I tell these stories, and I use a lot of wisdom throughout the world, Eastern philosophies, religion, and I mold them into stories. And I use a lot of pictures. Inside the Wick, there's a lot of diagrams, okay, that John draws, diagrams like, what are we made up of? Are we made up of mind, body, soul? How's that all breaking down? How's that all broke down? So I give you an insight into how that's broken down, and I give you some new insight into How would I learn this in a bar, right? Well, again, here I am doing the preaching, but it's through the eyes of an ordinary person. Well, actually, John turns out to be very special, someone very special at the end, but I can't tell you what that is. Okay, any other questions? I think we're almost out of time. So I guess that is it. And it's been a pleasure for me to be on the Festival Storytellers. I think I have 1 or 2 more segments to go. I hope you are enjoying my stories, and I hope you enjoy the books. All proceeds, by the way, of my books go to some cause. The Deacon goes to suicide awareness. The Wisdom goes to a scholarship fund. And the Magnolia, I don't know yet. So I haven't figured out how I'm going to send proceeds. But I don't make any money from the books. I basically, I do it from my heart. And it's my way of continuing to do the things that I love to do as a deacon. Say, God bless you, and have a great day, a great night. Thank you.